Are going to be doing a wonderful webinar today, and this webinar is going to be on explaining theory the AKMS way. Now, I got to thank some AKMS members that actually submitted some questions from before, and they asked me, Robert, can you explain this? And then instead of just explaining it just to them, I knew that I needed to show something visual. I decided to make it a webinar so that everybody can kind of see how it works, and therefore, if you have any questions, you guys can ask the questions, okay? So we're gonna get right into it. So my question is, what is a theory? Well, I'll answer that for you. A theory is simply an assumption based on limited information or knowledge, right? Here's another definition of theory. A system of rules or procedures and assumptions used to produce a result, or this is one of my favorite, it's a set of statements or principles devised to explain a group of facts or phenomena. Well, concerning music, we can say it like this. Musical theories are a set of statements or principles devised to explain a group of facts or a group of musical facts. So that's what I would say theories would be when it comes to music. Now, here's the thing. What does AKMS teach, or AKMS like to teach? Well, AKMS likes to teach the facts. So I'm a little bit biased today. So let's talk about what we're going to be covering today. Today, guys, I'm going to be covering identifying chords. So theory theory concerning identifying chords. There was a chord called a 6/4 chord. I'm not sure if you guys have heard that. All right, there's been a harmony in theory, and we're going to be covering some progressions in theory. And also another question that someone actually asked as well was modal interchange. So I'm hoping that I can get to a couple of these things, a couple of things within these different areas when regards to theory. Okay, guys. So now I'm putting theory number 1, not because it's the most important or the least important. It's just the first one I'm going to be talking about today. So basically, theory number 1. So this was something that was brought to my attention. I was sent this is a theory question, and the question was, use the example below to answer the question that follows. So we needed to be able to answer this, all right, or answer this question. So basically, they under it said the chord in the above example can be best described as which of the following, all right? So if we look at it, let's say, okay, we're gonna look at that. Hold on one second. All right, so let's pull up my piano. I gotta get used to this new screen. No, that's not what I want. Okay, over here. We had something that had 6 sharps, okay? So let me I had a diagram that had 6 sharps. So give me a quick second. Okay, so let me just make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so the diagram specifically had 6 sharps. Okay, now many of you that have been around me for a long time, you know how I feel about that. But for the sake of the example, we'll just have it. As you can see, it has the sharp. So everybody that knows, how your theory and the regular traditional theory, you know that the lines represent that every good boy deserves fudge, right? So therefore you have over here, I don't know if you can see this, but obviously you have your F sharp, then you have your C sharp here, then you have your G sharp, then you have your D sharp, then you have right here, it would have your A sharp, right? And then over here, it would have, what was this last sharp? Anybody know what this is called, this last sharp? I know what it's called, but anybody can tell me this last sharp, what it is? Okay, let me see. Thank you, Leroy. I prefer, and thank you, Nathaniel. Yes, traditional theory will call it an E sharp, but as Leroy said, it's really just an F, because if we were on the piano, right, and we had to actually, call it out. Yes, I understand that they use all these different types of theory. Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to get my arrows. Literally, guys, I mean, I know other webinars I was asking for, okay, does anybody know the design software and all of that stuff? But maybe they heard me and they decided to design it differently. But in that design, they've also Made things just a little bit more, actually, I think hopefully will get better. I just got to get used to it. So in saying that, yeah, these are real long arrows. That's okay, that can do. That will do. I'll just leave those ones there. Okay, exactly. So they said F sharp, as we said, got to get used to this thing over here, pointer. Okay, so F sharp had the F sharp as a sharp, right? They said they had the C sharp, right? Then they had, they had the G sharp, they had the D sharp, they had, notice that all of these are black, all right? And you would think it'd be the case. Then they said they had the E, but the E sharp, whoops, which in my book, that to me looks very much like an F. So that's my first red flag, but I'll leave it, I'll give it to them. All right, so the question though, the question was, which one of these examples, okay, use the example below to answer the question, which one of these chords best describes that? So first thing we got to do, we got to identify what these notes are. And as you can see, with every good boy deserves fudge, the first line is actually what they would call their E sharp, which I prefer to call it an F. So we have to, then we also have that first, the second line, which is a G, right? And obviously it has to be a G sharp. So let's go over here to my piano. Where's my piano? Okay, right? So in terms of the notes, okay, so they said they have an E sharp, which happens to be that. Then they said they had the G, but because it had the sharp in the key signature, right? And I know that for those of you that know theory, you know that this is just second nature for you, right? All right, so therefore it'd be the G sharp because that's what it had. And then it had, where's my thing? Over here, right? Then as you can see, it landed on the B, and the B doesn't have any sharps on it. Okay, so I can go back to this. Sorry. Just getting used to how they shift everything over. Right, so then they had the B. So that was my chord. So I can just move these guys out of the way. Very long, but anyways. Okay, so therefore, we had to identify what chord this is. So we have the F, we have the G sharp, and we have the B. Now, they would call it an E sharp, which I'll just let it stand for now, because I'm in the theory hat. So what chord would this be? So Sandra Kennedy said it would be an F minor. Well, it could seem like an F minor. However, if we were to play, okay, so Sandra says, no, it's not that. Okay, so Ephraim, you'd say a 7 diminished. Anybody else that want to take a crack at it, right? All right, so I'll wait 10 seconds while I create some more arrows. Okay. Okay, I will be there in a quick second. I'm just going to create some arrows that I'm most likely going to need later on. Okay, so all I wanted you to do is tell me which chord that is, and I'll identify it while I do 5 more of these arrows, because I know I'm going to need some of these guys. Okay. All right, so let's get to the answers now. All right, so let's say, all right, so Edward, 7 diminish. So 7 diminish. Leroy, F diminish. Nathaniel, 7 diminish. Matthew, F diminish. Thank you very much. Exactly. It would be an F diminished. Now in turn, and Ephraim, F diminished. Thank you. And I think you answered before, right? So what would be that number be in the key of F sharp? Okay, right? I like to say F diminished. So what number would it be? Okay, and I think you guys, a lot of you guys said it already, all right? So I know Edward, you said it. Nathaniel, you said it. And Matthew, you're saying it. Exactly. It'd be the 7 diminished. Sandra, you'd say it. Exactly. It'd be the 7 diminished. So now when we look at this now, you can see in terms of the answer, what they call a diminished, they use that little round circle. Okay. So when they have, as you can see, it has the 7. I don't know if you guys can see that, right? It's pretty hard to see, but they have that little circle. That circle represents a diminish, all right? So the answer would be, and you guys answered it, it would be a 7, and it's a 7 as a diminish. Now, here's my summary of all of that, okay? This is a legitimate chord, okay? So this 100%, that chord is a legitimate chord. Well, this is not the chord. Let me move this other way, right? That chord is a legitimate chord, all right? So that's not theory. That's a musical fact. That's a chord, and it's a diminished, okay? All right, but here's my thing about this. This is a chord that we know that happens on the 7, as you guys know, all right? However, I believe that E sharp is an illegitimate note, okay? So in music theory, I believe that that E sharp should not exist and they should not be teaching it. Now, I don't have the time to get into it, but if you guys go on YouTube or even on my Facebook group, you know that I did a teaching on inharmonic equivalence, and I'll teach you about the naming of inharmonic equivalence and the function of inharmonic equivalence. It's a simple fix that they can fix. They can erase it and don't include it. Just simply call it an F diminished, not an E sharp diminished, but an F diminished, because if they understand that the names of keys never change, but the functions of the key can change. So for example, we can call it an F diminished, right? We can call it an F diminished, but we will call it a 7 diminished, okay? And the diminished chord can be used at different places, right? But it's always going to be called 7, all right? So if you want to get the full 20-minute breakdown, I think I did like 30 minutes, then that would get your answer. Robert, I agree. The idea of an E sharp has always seemed strange to me. Well, the reason why it's strange is because it shouldn't be there. Okay, but if you were doing a theory test, just know that you won't get the correct answer if you say, well, it shouldn't be there. They'll mark it wrong. But when give us enough time, we'll be able to change it where everybody will look at it the way that we look at it. It's an illegitimate way of looking at music, all right? Name and function. But if you don't know how to explain it, please watch that video so you have the ability to explain it or debate with somebody if they were to ask you and say, okay, how can you say that? Well, you just explain the difference between a name of a key and a function. The numbers will change, but the names never change, okay? So that's one thing about it. And another thing about it is simply this. We should label it F, G sharp, and B. Or we could even label it F, A flat, and B. And I know some of the traditional theory would say, well, that's not the correct spelling. And I would say, well, we're not doing an English test. This is music. And music has specific rules for music, okay? So you can do that. Just tell them name and function, okay? So that's with that theory example. Let's go to the next one, all right? This is theory number 2,